welcome Miss Mallory.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. As I was introduced, my name is Miss Mallory, the Curious Conservationist, and I am a nature detective and also a science communicator. And I travel the world working with scientists, going into some crazy places. We go into deep jungles, really dark caves. In fact, I just got back from an adventure a couple of years ago where we went into a cave that actually had bat-eating snakes that hung from the ceiling. So lots of really crazy cool adventures. My favorite animals are the creepy-crawly, gross, and scary. Why? Because I used to be so afraid of them when I was little. And when I started to learn about them and discover them, I realized just how cool the animals really were and that they weren't out to get me. They were more just doing their job. And it was because of us humans that gave them a bad name was why I was so scared of them. So we'll be talking about some of my favorite creepy crawlies that I have with me today. I call them my critter crew. As you see behind me, I have a very big enclosure here. It has a very big tarantula in there. I won't be bringing her out, but I'll be bringing out one of her sheds. And then I also have some different types of bugs that we can find in our backyards, as well as some lizards that maybe don't really look like lizards. So that's kind of what we'll be doing today. Elle Crawford, if you'd like to be my assistant, I would love that so much. As we're going to go through this, I'm going to be asking questions. And if you want to give your best guess, remember, no guess is wrong. As long as you really think about it, then I think it'll be super fun. So just to show a little bit about the things that I do, sorry, Miss Kate, a little later on, I might have a PowerPoint. So if I'm able to share, that would be awesome. But so first, I want to say, what is a nature detective? Many times when we go into the jungles or the oceans or wherever we may be, we often don't see the animal we're looking for, right? Because animals are fantastic at hide and seek. They're the best. And so we have to look for clues. And the best way to look for clues is by using all your senses. You can use your sight, right? You can use your hearing. You can use even your smell. We really don't want to use our taste, right? Because that would be really gross. So we don't want to go out and eat things in nature, but we can definitely use our other senses to be able to recognize if something's been in the area. And sometimes those clues are really simple, right? Because if we saw this, do we know what this is? Elle Crawford, would you like to make a guess? You don't have to if you don't want to, but I'll tell you a little bit about the animal. So this animal lives where I live. Very good. It's a turtle shell. So this turtle, the turtles live where I live. This is not a native species of turtle because it is illegal for us to have any kind of shells or feathers from our native animals. This animal is actually from Asia that I had, but it looks very similar to the ones that we have in our backyards. So right, it's a turtle, right? So we know that a turtle has been around. One of the things I want to mention about turtles in our backyards is that they're having a really hard time. So if we can help turtles by letting them cross the roads, if we can ask an adult to help them do it safely, but also more importantly is to not take them as pets. Unfortunately, turtles they can't run away very fast. And many people think they make really good pets, but they live a really long time. And to leave a turtle in the wild will help future turtles, and so that we can see them in the wild where they belong. Another sign that we might see, right, because we're going on our senses, is something like this. What do we think this could possibly be? It's long. Right, it's a snake. You guys are so good. So this is a snake from my barn. And what's really cool about these snakes is that you can tell if it's a venomous snake or a non-venomous snake by looking at its scales. So if you look at the belly scales of a snake, you'll see that there's some really long scales here, right, on the belly. If you look down towards the tail, you will see that the snake scales divide in two. Can you see the two right there? That's a non-venomous snake. This is a rat snake shed. If it was venomous, these long scales here would go all the way down to the very tip of the tail. So you can actually look at snake sheds in your barn or on the ground and know if it's a venomous snake that's been going through your yard or a non-venomous, so venomous or non-venomous. But also, speaking of venomous and non-venomous, there's some really important animals in our backyards that we may not know about that really help protect us against venomous snakes. And venomous snakes aren't bad, right? They do their job. But sometimes if we're not being careful as humans and we surprise a venomous snake, and if we surprise a venomous snake, then of course they're going to want to protect themselves, right? Because when we're scared, we'll do anything we can to protect ourselves. But if we have a king snake in our backyard, king snakes like to take care of venomous snakes, and also opossums. Opossums look like giant rats. They're actually North Americans' only marsupial. They're cousins of the kangaroo, but they actually will keep away venomous snakes and also ticks. So they're very important to have in our backyard. We're going to move on to, we're going to go, so right now we just finished with looking at clues. And another way of seeing animals too, I'm kind of going around in a circle, but is also by looking at tracks. Many animals, when they go through areas like mud, will leave tracks. And so by learning what different tracks are, you can figure out what kind of animals are in your backyard. So let's see. Oh, sorry, everyone. Let's see if it'll let me share my other one. Can you guys see the slideshow by chance? Okay, great. So I'm an outdoor person. I'm not very good at technology, so bear with me. Okay, so backyard wildlife. We have so many incredible things in our backyards, and oftentimes they like to come around when no humans are around. Wildlife really doesn't want to be around wildlife. And so if you look at some of these footprints, you can see we probably won't have bears. We won't see very many of those, but mainly the coyotes and the bobcats, raccoons love to be around humans. And you can tell the difference between a cat track and a dog track is the picture in the middle. If you were to put two sticks in an X's, if you look at the bottom right-hand side, if you put two sticks in between the toes, if it makes an X, it's a dog print. If the sticks lay over toe prints, then it's a cat print. And so those are two ways that you can tell what kind of animals are in your backyard. But another great way to learn about tracks is actually by using this animal. This is Atlas, my adventure cat. And because it's so hard to find wildlife in the city, what I do is I will take her outside. She wears a leash because I don't like to bring cats into the wild. She's not happy with me right now. But I'll put a leash on her and then I watch where she steps. And by watching how she moves around and how her feet kind of sink into the ground and what her behaviors are, I can learn about what wild animals might do. For instance, what I'll do with her is if I put her near a plant, I see that she likes to sniff the plant and then she'll walk in a circle around the plant. And so I can look at her paw prints as she's investigating to see how a wild animal might investigate. And so if I'm out in the jungle and somehow I lose the tracks, I will think, wow, he was acting a lot like my cat. So he was probably investigating. So I'm sure he tried to look at that tree and then I'll go look at the tree and sure enough, I'll usually find the tracks. So by studying our human companions, or animal companions, I should say, we're able to learn more about wildlife. But enough about me talking. Let's actually start seeing wildlife, yeah? So as I mentioned earlier, my favorite animals are the creepy-crawly, gross, and scary. And I actually have some as part of my, we call them critter cruise. And one of my favorite places when I first started learning about adventuring, because I did not grow up adventuring at all, not until I was about 20, I didn't know where to look. I would look at trees and birds were okay, but I wanted things that I could get up close and personal. And one of the coolest places that you can look is underneath a log because it has so much life and it's right there and there's logs everywhere. And so you can see things all the time. One of the first animals that I never really appreciated, but now absolutely love are these guys. Can anybody guess what these are? I'm sure they live in the ground. They come out when it rains. They are worms, absolutely. So worms are really cool. We think, oh, whatever, worms, right? Worms are so cool because they have some really incredible superpowers. So take a deep breath in. What we're doing is we're taking air into our nose and into our lungs, and then the oxygen goes out through our entire body. Well, with a worm, they don't have lungs. They actually breathe through their skin. And so that's why they usually come out when it rains, because it's wet outside, right? But also why it's so important that if you see a worm on the sidewalk, you put him in the ground as fast as you can, because it's like us trying to live underwater. It's not going to work. And so worms are so important for the environment because they break down all that kind of gross stuff that nobody else wants to break down. Rotten fruit, leaf litter, and they turn it back into really important food for our plants. Earlier, we looked at a snake shed, right? Well, bugs, different types of invertebrates, shed too. So we got super lucky. This is actually my millipede, and he's shedding his skin right now. Really cool. So just like reptiles, bug skin, right? It's not really a bug, it's called an invertebrate. So invertebrate skin doesn't grow with the animal. Instead, the animal will make new scales or skin underneath, and it's called their exoskeleton, and they will grow, and finally they'll get so big and so tight that it pops the outer shell off. And so this millipede is shedding its outer exoskeleton, has a fresh new one underneath. Now, millipedes look very similar to another animal that some of us may be afraid of, and that's the centipede, right? Centipedes and millipedes look very, very similar, but they're very, very different. So I don't want to hold him too often because his exoskeleton is very, very soft right now. And so we want to make sure that he gets it nice and hard so he can protect himself. But you'll see that he has lots of tiny little legs. A millipede will have 2 pairs of legs per segment, and a centipede will only have 1 leg per segment. Millipedes are decomposers, and they break down all the leaf litter and all the dead wood, and they return it back to the soil for trees. Where centipedes are predators. They eat little insects. They can even eat sometimes frogs and small mammals, and they have little pinchers. The centipedes, again, we don't need to be afraid of them, but we definitely don't want to interact with a centipede. And if you were to ever lift up a log, millipedes will go in a circle like this when they're scared, but centipedes will run away, right? Because they have that venom, so they're not going to be afraid, and they're going to try to run away and go into some leaf litter or another hiding area, where the millipede will roll up in a circle and hope and pray that its outer exoskeleton will protect itself. I'm going to go ahead and put this guy back so his exoskeleton can get nice and hard again. Speaking of sheds, now this animal is not native to the United States, so you don't have to worry about something this big sneaking up on you. This is the same type of spider. This is her shed that is in this enclosure, and you can see why I don't want to take her out. This is called a Goliath bird-eating tarantula. Very cool, right? Now, tarantulas and spiders are arachnids, and they are so important for the environment. I used to be terrified of tarantulas and spiders, but the more you learn about them, the more you realize just how amazing they are. For instance, I'm sure we've all heard of Spider-Man, right? Well, spiders actually have real spidey senses. They have these amazing hairs all around their body that tell them about everything what's going on. They tell them about the temperature. They tell them about the air pressure, if there's a storm coming. They tell them about if there's an animal nearby that might get them. They can feel the most tiny vibrations. If say a bird flies over them, they can also feel tiny vibrations in the leaf litter. So if they know there's a bug around, that they can maybe stay still and hopefully the bug will get close enough and they can jump on them. Her name is Bertha, and Bertha's favorite food is the next animal that I'm going to be showing you. Now be very quiet because they'll make a sound. We have to listen. Ready? Let's see. Oh, hold on. They're a little cold. Are they going to do it? No. They are called hissing cockroaches. And I know cockroaches, we think, gross, Miss Mallory, why are you touching them? In fact, though, only about 1% of the entire world's cockroaches are technically gross. And unfortunately, they all live in our houses. Awesome, right? All the other cockroaches that live in the world, that live in the wild, they break down leaf litter and they are decomposers, and just like the millipede and the worms. So they're very important for our environment. But as just like the worms, insects don't have lungs. Instead, they have this weird network that they can like move air around their body. And so what these cockroaches do is, because they are a very tasty treat for a lot of animals, their defense mechanism is to hiss, but they don't hiss through their mouth. They hiss through holes on the sides of their bodies. And so they'll pull in air, and then whenever they get upset, they're probably just so used to me holding them that they're not going to get scared, but they'll hiss that you can see, or that you can hear. Now the males and the females are very different. The males have little horns on them. Sorry, my nails are yellow because I was gardening yesterday. The males have little horns on them, and the females have a flat head that you can see. So the difference between a male and a female. And the males use those horns to push each other around to show who is boss in the colony. Okay. But one of my favorite backyard creatures is one that you've probably seen all the time. And the reason why it's my favorite is because it's not a bug at all. Do we know what these are? Has anyone ever seen these before? You can go ahead and write it in the comments if you want. But the reason why they are so cool is because they look like bugs. They look like our millipede friend, right? But they're not. They're actually cousins, right? It's a roly-poly. They're actually cousins of shrimp and crabs and lobsters. They're land crustaceans. And so their nearest cousin lives at the bottom of the ocean, and they look just like a roly-poly, but they're about this big. Could you imagine finding that underneath the log? I would be so happy. But those are our backyard critters. So what I'll do, so we are 10:21. I'll ask our two wonderful assistants, would we rather guess about skulls and figure out how can we find out what kind of creatures these cool skulls are, or do we want to continue and learn, see some lizards? Do we have any suggestions? If not, you know what? Let's go ahead and just do the skulls, because skulls are fun. So we'll do skulls for about another 5 minutes, and then we'll learn about the lizards, and then we'll be good with our programs, and you guys can be nature detectives outside on your own. So skulls are really fun because you can learn so much about an animal, right? By looking at its teeth, by looking at the shape of its head. So we're gonna do some of my favorite skulls. These are replicas, they're not real skulls. So this big guy can actually be seen in the United States, right? He's really cool. You can see he has some really amazing, it's called a beak. This is a sea turtle. It's a loggerhead sea turtle. And the space behind here, you may think this is a really big brain, but really this is the muscles, because what they eat are these very hard shells. They're called conch, and they need really powerful jaws to be able to bite that shell and crush it down. So really amazing muscles that they have to have. Let's see, I'm gonna do a few more of my favorite ones. Okay, next one in line, let me grab another one. So this looks kind of like, do we have any guesses of what this might be? So we can see that the teeth come through the snout and wrap around. We can see that the teeth down here, they'll eat some vegetation. So more than likely they're on the ground. And they have these really amazing tusks. Great guess, a warthog. So this animal is actually a distant relative of the warthog. It's called a babirusa. And now these are the coolest creatures I have seen. I fell in love with them when I worked at a zoo. And so I'll show you a picture of them real quick. So this is this babirusa. They are the coolest looking pigs. And scientists used to think that they use their tusks to fight, but as you can see, they use their legs when they're fighting. What that tusk is for, and they're still trying to figure this out, is they think it's to impress the ladies. You know, the bigger the tusk and the rounder it is, the more it's able to brag about how much food it's been getting and can get the females as well. However, the bigger the tusk sometimes isn't the best, because that tusk will actually go back into its head and has been known to go back into its skull. Okay, we will do one more. So this is also one of my favorite animals that I used to work with because they're just so unique. What in the world could this be, huh? Has very long teeth, and it has flat teeth on the side. So we know it's an herbivore, so it likes to eat grass and leaves and plants. But what in the world could those long teeth be for? This is actually a mammal. It's a very small animal. And those tusks or canines aren't meant to hurt anybody. Well, I take that back. They're meant to defend themselves, not to necessarily use to eat like fangs, like a cat would. It is we're almost there, the anticipation. So this is called a Chinese water deer. And Chinese water deer are so cool. As you can see, they don't have antlers like our deer. Instead, they have those long fangs, and it helps them protect themselves. The males have the fangs. That's what they use instead of antlers. Because they live in a very dense forest, antlers will get caught in trees all the time. And so instead, they have these long fangs to help fight other males for territory. But what is the coolest thing is that unlike our deer that only have 1 or 2 fawn per season, these deer can have up to 8 babies at one time. And they're about the size of a kitten. So they're so cute and tiny. And if you can imagine some tiny little baby fawn that are only about this big, just melts your heart, I promise. But okay, so we are going to go on to our last animal of the day. He is buried right now. So you give me just 1 minute as I grab him. Okay, so this animal looks like a snake. He is not a snake. He is called a legless lizard. And we actually have legless lizards here in the United States. They're not this big. They're much, much smaller, about half his size. But legless lizards are so neat because even though they don't have legs, they're not snakes, right? And you're like, Miss Mallory, I thought all lizards without legs are snakes. Well, you can tell by the anatomy. So legless lizards, he's going to show me that he's uncomfortable for a second, and then he'll be good. So legless lizards, let me see if I get his head closer to the, will have eyelids, and they have ear holes on the side of his head. My goodness, Shelton. And so they're able to hear where a snake will not have any holes on the side of its head. So what he's doing right now, unlike snakes that are able to wrap around a tree limb, he has to be completely left on the ground. That's where he's most comfortable. So right now, with me having him a little bit higher up, he's like, whoa, only a portion of my body is touching the ground. What's going on? So he'll calm down as soon as he realizes that it's me and not someone else. But let's see. Okay, so you can see on the side of his head, he has those ear holes, and he also has eyelids. So snakes have clear scales that go over their eyes, but lizards, all lizards will have eyelids that allow them to blink and allow them to sleep. And it's the cutest thing when you can watch a lizard sleep. But Shelton also has a different body structure than a snake. Snakes will have about 90% body, all ribs, and a teeny itty bitty tail. Where Shelton here, he's also known as a glass lizard, has about this much body and the rest is tail. And the tail, just like a normal lizard, can will be removed if, say, a predator tries to get him. He's not going to want to do that. That's going to be his absolutely last step because he doesn't want to lose a third of his body, right? So he's going to try other things, like he's going to spin. He's really great at hissing. He's never bit. Of course, he's a wild animal, so it's a possibility he can, but I've been working with him for about 10 years, so he knows that he's safe and no one's going to hurt him. But we never want to pick up an animal from the wild, right? We always want to just look at them from afar and admire them and let them go about their way. And if we can always make our backyards friendly for wildlife, then it's even better to practice being a nature detective because they'll leave us a bunch of signs all the time. But that is our program for today. If you guys have any questions, just go ahead and write them in the comments beside. I'm going to go ahead and put Shelton back really quick, and then I'll be right back to answer your questions. Great. Thanks, everybody. I'm so glad that you guys had so much fun with this. And if you want to go over it again, it's recorded. And so you can also share it on Facebook. If you'd like to learn more about my adventures, you can go to missmalloryadventures.com, or I'm also on social media if you want to ask your parents to see that as well. And that's some of the adventures that I've been on as well. So thank you guys so much for having me. Were there any questions, Miss Kate?
I don't think so. I didn't see anybody raising their hand. It didn't look like we had any in the chat, but I just wanted to say thank you so much because I've seen a lot of animal shows. And I tell you what, I learned so much today that I did not know before. So thank you very much. I'm very happy that we were able to connect with you. And hopefully we can have you come to the library in person and bring some of your friends very soon. So
I would love that. Well, everyone be safe, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.